were just made by programmers who tended to like Star Trek or like Arthur C. Clarke, anything to do with space and astronauts and spaceships and things. So there's lots of games called like Captain X or Mission X or just like a kind of completely fantasy thing. But we realised when we analysed what was selling, it was more, although there was lots of games, the ones that were selling were more the ones that people were really interested in. So like we did BMX races for Master and that sold hundreds of thousands of units. So we were trying to do games not that programmers were interested in, but that the general public, what they were interested in. So at the time it was skateboarding and BMX riding. And so we were trying to do games based on popular themes. And then we were trying to do games that were really realistic, so that's why they were almost like simulations of what was popular in real life culture. That was the kind of strategy behind it.
And what do you think the benefit was of brand? You could have just called this like Formula One and BMX riders and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What do you think was the main sort of focus of having simulator on the package, the benefits of it?
Well, people used to talk about flight simulators, where they would go to an airport and go in a simulator like a pilot would use. The simulator was a kind of known expression, but for us it kind of became like a brand that we just used.
Yeah.
Although we probably couldn't trademark it because it's too descriptive. It was something that we could use like a brand.
But you'd know, going into a store, if you saw a simulator, you'd think, well, it's perhaps a little bit more serious than just a game, and also having that branding across everything. Bruce, perhaps you think more of that from the marketing side. It was a very sort of established thing that Codemasters were known for.
It also made it, not just selling to the public, you've got to sell into the trade in the first place. And if you ring round all the distributors and you say, oh, we've got this new title coming out, Fruit Machine Simulator next week, they go, well, we had so much, the ATV sold so well, BMX sold so well, they're all called Simulator, I'll have some.
Yeah.
So, and there's a couple of things from that time that people perhaps don't know. One is that our brand image that you see there, our logo, all our packaging designs, most of the pictures, were all done by a guy called Nigel Fletcher, so he had a lot to do with our early success. And then the games graphics were done by a guy called James Wilson, and he gave us superb graphics and very much the house style. So those two guys were very, very important to our early success.
And there was another game I think that you could say was probably your most successful franchise, perhaps, which is Dizzy. Obviously, I think most people when they think of Codemasters, they either think of the simulators or Dizzy first and foremost. People my sort of age, anyway. The younger ones, maybe something a bit different. So that was produced by the Oliver twins. How did they get involved with working for Codemasters?
I think we saw that there was an exhibition and we had a stand and they visited the stand because we were looking to work with other developers. And I think that's how we met them. And then we asked, because we were doing all of these like simulator games, I think we asked them to do a Robin Hood game or something festival. And so they did that.
Is that the one?
Yeah, but what they'd been working on this character themselves. And to be completely honest, I wasn't that excited about it because it wasn't a simulation. But I didn't want to kind of upset them, so we just kind of let them work on it in their own time and just carried on working on it. And Andrew was very enthusiastic about it. So we just let them work on it, and eventually it was finished. And we were surprised how playable it was. And so we marketed it for them. But it was mostly their creation, really.
So was Dizzy, sales-wise, I know critically it was certainly one of the most successful games. Was it sales-wise one of the most successful as well, the Dizzy series as a whole?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I think at one stage it was like 1, 2, and 3 in the charts.
Yeah.
Like
the different game. Which one was actually the most? Well, which one? Let's say, which one did you think was the best of the game, of the actual game in terms of gameplay? Was a particular one that stood out as?
Like the Dizzy games.
Yeah.
I'm not sure because they were all good, but once you finished them, you'd kind of done it.
Yeah.
It's not like a game. Like my personal favourite game of all time is Micro Machines, because you can replay it.
Yeah.
out there now and play it.
Yeah. Never get
I would beat you.
You've got a challenge on the side. I beat you at it. Maybe we'll try that out later on.
Yeah,
Okay. I want to. This one's just purely. I'm being a bit self-indulgent here. It wasn't. I don't think it was particularly successful. But this, as far as I know, is the first example of games being provided on a CD. Probably in the late 80s. So CD players weren't that prevalent at that time. So this is the CD games pack, which is effectively 30 of the tape-based games all put on one CD. How did the idea for that come about?
Well, up until then we've been doing games on all the different home computers, so like Commodore VIC-20 and Commodore 64 and Commodore 16, etc., etc. And then before this, we did the game Genie, I think, which was like a device that let you plug Nintendo cartridges. It kind of interfaced between the Nintendo and the game and let you change the game so you could have extra lives and things. So we kind of got into hardware, and we had a couple of hardware guys on that joined the team. And we thought, why are we still selling games on cassette that take 5 minutes to load or 10 minutes to load when we can put them on compact disc? And at that stage, compact discs were just used for music, they weren't really used for data. But we thought, well, we can store it. It's still a digital media, so we can use it to store data. So we developed this interface on the cable that let you read the signal as if it was an ultra fast tape recorder, basically.
So the cable there plugged into the headphone socket of the CD player, and you'd use the tape to load something, and then that would allow you to load the game off the CD.
So it's a good piece of technology, but it didn't sell very well.
No, I was just that was my next question actually, was it popular, or was it a little bit too clever for its time, perhaps?
Well, nowadays when somebody launches a console, they say it costs like at least $1 billion to develop it and launch it. And in those days it wasn't such a high thing, but if you want to introduce a new format, which we were doing really, we needed to put a lot more money behind the marketing. I watched people like W.H. Smiths, and they would look at it and they just were confused because they thought, well, you can't buy games on compact discs, so what is it?
Yeah, and a CD player wasn't particularly cheap at that time either, I suppose, was it? Well, you mentioned the game Genie, and funnily enough, that's the next thing I wanted to talk about. So the game Genie, as you say, it allowed you to effectively cheat on. I mean, it started as a Nintendo NES product, and it was branched out into others. But who came up with the technology for that? You were quite closely involved with that, I believe. Is that right?
It was my friend Ted and my brother and me. Like had a brainstorming day where we went away. Sometimes we go away and we just try and think, what can we do that's completely new in the industry? So we went away, and the computer industry was having trouble because Nintendo was taking over, especially in America. The NES was massively successful. So we were trying to think, what's the best Nintendo game that we can do? And then we suddenly thought, well, maybe we can do something that works with all of the games. And so we thought we'd build an interface that would let Mario jump higher or have extra lives, or you could start, because Super Mario Brothers was the most successful game. So we thought this thing would let you start on whichever level you wanted to, or have extra weapons, all that kind of stuff. So we developed it, and we patented it, and we sold it to a toy company in America. And then Nintendo sued the company, and it took about 2 or 3 years going from court case to court case, all the way up to the Supreme Court, until they eventually won, and it got sold. And then it was our best-selling product. They sold $140 million worth of that product.
Yeah, and just to clarify, they took on Nintendo and won. They earned the right to sell that product. I believe it's because it didn't actually use any Nintendo technology effectively, did it?
It's quite complicated. It was because the Nintendo, like Miyamoto was saying that he didn't want people changing Mario. When you create something, you have the right to create, they call it a derivative work, so a new version of it. And he was saying because Mario was like jumping high and things like that we were doing a slightly different version of his game. But the judge, in the end, the judge said that it wasn't, because when you unplugged it, it was back how it used to be, so it was transient, so it wasn't like a fixed copyrighted work, it was just an effect that was created.
Okay. Okay, there's another bit of technology involved in the next one I want to look at as well, which is, as you mentioned, micro machines. First of all, obviously, micro machines is a product. The toy was made by Glue, so did that come about as a result of the work you did with them with the Game Genie? Was how the relationship was built there?
Yeah, we went to San Francisco where Glue Toys was based to sell them the Game Genie idea. And then when we were there, we noticed the little toy cars that they were selling. They said they sell more cars than Detroit makes, where people manufacture real cars. So then Andrew Graham, who was the creator of the game, he was already working on a game for us called California Beach Buggies, which was beach buggies racing around sand dunes and like jumping and like skipping around and stuff. And then we thought, well, we could take those toys, that license, and we could do a game using Andrew's technology. And so we put the two things together to kind of create the game.
And to me, it's because of the era it's from. I would say it's possibly the most popular series from Codemasters in so much as it spanned several generations of console.
Yeah.
Is that true? Was it financially the most successful?
I'm not sure if it was one of our most successful, but I think like Colin McRae Rally and Tokyo Cars and the Game Genie were big as well. Yeah. But it's my favourite game, like in terms of playability.
Yeah.
And we did versions on different consoles for quite a few years. So.
Yeah. Always popular at these events as well. It's a pick up and play game as well. So obviously the second version on the Mega Drive came with this thing called the J-Cart, which allowed you to plug 2 extra controls in and play 4-player or even 8-player on some versions. Is that right?
Yeah.
With 2 people using 1 pad, which is crazy. So who came up with that, and was it complicated?
Well, because we had hardware people to do the CD games back in the Game Genie, but we also set up a small factory to make the Nintendo games and the Sega games. So we'd always liked doing multiplayer games. So normally on a Sega Mega Drive you could only have 2-player games because you had 2 joystick ports. But we thought, how can you have more players? Because it's more fun with more players. So we just came up with the idea of putting the joystick ports onto the cartridge, and then you could have 4 players simultaneously. And then we thought, well, you can share the joypad, so you can have two players on each joypad, so you can get 8 players. So it's a way of like trying to get the maximum number of players. Because we found if you have them playing in a room and they're all like laughing and joking and smiling, and that's the most fun you can have with it.
I totally agree. Multiplayer gaming for me is not online against people on the other side of the world swearing at you. It's all sitting in and enjoying it. So again, you preempted my next one by mentioning Colin McRae Rally. So this is going to be the last one we talk about. I think this is perhaps one of your most well-known franchises on the PlayStation. So how did the licensing deal with Colin McRae come about?
Well, the guy who was running the Sega factory was called Steve Holly, and he was also doing our if we needed to get like endorsements like this kind of thing, we would send him. And we had a friend, my secretary's husband, used to do rally driving, so he actually knew Colin McRae's dad. So we sent Steve to see Colin McRae's dad because he kind of acted like his manager and did the deal.
And throughout the whole career of Codemasters, I'd like to bring you back in on this a bit, Bruce, as well, just to get you involved a bit more. I'm a bit conscious that you sat quietly at the end. There seems to have been a theme about sort of motors and things with wheels, effectively, throughout the sort of Codemasters era that you were both involved with. Was that simply because you just like cars a lot? You know, was there something personal in that, or was it just coincidence? Anyone? Do you like cars?
Yes, of course. Toys. Yes, David likes cars, Richard like cars. Jim likes cars a lot, the father.
We both like, me and Richard used to like doing go-karting and track racing.
Yeah.
We're going go-karting next week. Like, we're kind of into motor racing.
Yeah.
And we like doing games based on real physics. So this kind of simulation is just something that's personally interesting to us.
And would you say that this was one of the most successful games of the PlayStation era for you? And how did you sort of, how did Codemasters adapt to having to suddenly deal with 3D and you know, bigger processing power and having to move polygons around and all that kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, we really liked playing Sabre Rally in the arcades, but apart from that, there wasn't really like a convincing 3D rally simulation on the home computers. And then when the PlayStation came out, Sony were pushing us to do like three-dimensional games. That was their big selling point with PlayStation 1. So we thought, can we really do like a convincing simulation of rally driving on the PlayStation? And we thought we could. So we just, so that's what we tried to do, to make it really hyper-realistic, based on the sport, rather than, so not really like an arcade game, more of a simulation.
Yeah, going back to the simulators.
Yeah.
Really. Okay, that's only like a brief history of Codemasters, but we do want to move on to what you guys do now. But just quickly, can you tell us, both of you tell us, what you did after leaving Codemasters? Now, Bruce, you actually left and then went back again, so do you want to give us a quick summary of why you left, why you came back, why you left again, and what you've been doing over the next few years?
Well, I was at Codemasters at the very, very beginning, and then I left to run my own business, which some people here might know are something called All Formats Computer Fairs. And I ran computer fairs all over Britain for a decade or more. And so I had my own business. But they kept asking me to go back. And I actually did go back to do odds and ends for them. I went to Japan twice for them, for instance. But in the end, I got really bored with the computer fair business. And so I went back to work for them part-time, but really intended it was full-time. So that's how I got back the second time. And then when the venture capitalists took over, they parachuted in their own management team, so I left. And I then worked as a consultant to a number of different video game companies. And I set up a forum for artists called artforums.co.uk, which is quite successful. But the thing that's best known is I started a blog called Bruce on Games, and that got read by millions of people. It was a very, very well read blog, and there was 900 and something articles there on everything there is to do with video games. I wrote in there.
And I believe some of those have courted a little bit of controversy. There's a particular online role-playing company that you got the ire of there for.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a Chinese role-playing online people. They didn't like it when I said what was happening about their game, and they tried to sue me in Australia for libel, and they lost. But it was really funny being in the High Court in Australia, I can tell you. They cost them a lot of money.
Yeah.
It just cost them a huge amount of money. And another thing is there's some people out there who are piracy deniers. They deny that piracy ever caused any harm to the industry. And they don't like it because I'm very anti-piracy as well, so that causes quite a bit of controversy. But yeah, had some fun on that.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things to learn from this presentation so far. You don't take either of these guys on in a court case. And don't mention piracy. Okay, so that's for you, Bruce. And David, you eventually sold your share in Codemasters.
Yeah.
Middle of last decade, was it about 2007? Yeah. What was the reason for that? Why did you decide was it purely just you got an offer you couldn't refuse, or were you just not finding the industry very interesting at that time?
It was, well, I think I've been doing it for like 20 years, and I don't know, just wanted to break from it really, because it was like, I've been doing it for so long. And it's a bit like being strapped to a roller coaster going up and down. Like sometimes it's going well and sometimes it's not going well. And I just wanted to do something else for a couple of years.
And you also, you should have mentioned this earlier, received honours from the Queen for services to the computer gaming industry.
Yeah.
You got CBE, so how did that come about, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, I'm not sure how it happened. I just got left through the post one day. I don't know how they decide. But yeah, it was for services to the computer games industry. And then we went down to collect it when there was other people doing it. And she was very nice.
She was very nice.
Did she play any of the games?
Well, you're not supposed to ask big questions. But I couldn't help myself, so I said, do you play computer games? And she said, oh no, I'm much too old for that. Leave that to the grandkids.
Fair enough. Okay, so that brings us pretty much up to date. And you formed a new company called Kwalee. Do you want to explain what the name of the company means, where it comes from?
The name is, well, because I kind of got into the industry because of my granddad being involved in electronics. And he was also into, because he was in the Australian Navy, he was into boats, and his boat was called Kwalee. And it's Aboriginal, it means wait for me. Like, if you wave at somebody, you say wait for me.
Okay. So why, after obviously you left Codemasters and you've I think it's fair to say you've achieved quite a bit of money out of that. Why would you decide to come back into this industry when really you probably don't particularly need to?
Yeah, because I really like making games. I like making games. I like watching people play the games that I've been involved in. And I suppose it's like a creative. It's like being an artist or a musician. It's like a creative work that you get fulfillment out of people enjoying. So I wanted to get back into the industry, and then I fell in love with Apple and the iPhone and the whole way that it's like a digital media, that if we make a great game, that we can distribute it to millions of people around the world almost instantly. So it's kind of dependent on the quality of what we make, which is that's kind of the centre of the core value of the company.
A lot of people who are working in the apps, iPhone industry say it's kind of like going back to the days of bedroom coding or the small teams of 3 or 4 people producing games. Was that something that particularly attracted you to that industry rather than going back into doing console games, for example?
Yeah, definitely, because by the time I left the console industry, the teams were some of the teams were like 100 people, and it would cost like £10 million to make a game. And it's difficult to take any risks then. You can't just say, oh, we're going to do a game about this, like some crazy idea, because there's too much money involved, and there's too many people involved. So you tend to do lots of sequels, and like lots of movie licenses and things like that. But with phone games, you can have a team of 2 or 3 really talented people, and you can just do a game in a few weeks.
Yeah.
It's more to do with the creativity and originality, and coming up with good ideas.
Okay, and obviously you formed this company and went back to some of the old associates, and Bruce came back involved. How did that occur?
Well, Dave and I had a chat about it a few times before, and then as soon as he got going, he said to me, we could do with you helping us really, and that was it. And for me, it's just the perfect job. It's a startup company, which I like. It's video games, which I like, and it's really, really difficult, which I like.
Okay, I'm going to put a picture up now, which I found on your website. Now you probably can't see that. I believe this is your wife, David, and she's polishing an iPad. It can't quite make that out, but she's polishing an iPad. So do you want to explain? I think Bruce is better placed to explain how this came about. What is it? Obviously, it's a nice picture to look at. What's the subtext of it?
Well, Tanya is very, very keen and enthusiastic to model herself, and so she has a lot to do with this. You know, I'm pretty much a victim when Tanya's around, I can tell you. And she's going to pin a lot more. We've got a lot more planned of Tanya starring in videos and all sorts of stuff. And we were thinking that a lot of apps are very, very good but haven't succeeded just because they haven't been marketed. And so we were looking for people who have such apps to get in touch with us. And so this is Tanya polishing an iPad.
So effectively you're saying that if a game is polished, then it's got a better chance of success than all the other games.
Yeah, we polish it and market it.
Yeah.
Not market it. The idea, concept really didn't work. We were just trying to get games we could market and work on early on in the history of the company. And we got some, but the whole idea didn't work very well for us. So now, obviously, we've got our own game, which we've been playing for a few months now, and we've got a whole pile of other games prototype now, so we don't need it anymore.
Yeah. Okay. So you did mention upcoming games. So the one I found most information about on your website is called Project Vegemite. This is effectively all the material I can find about this game so far. So we've got some concept artwork, there's a picture of someone, one of your team working on the game there, and also a whiteboard with presumably some ideas on there. So I know the games are quite top secret at the moment and you don't want to reveal too much, but perhaps you can just give us a little bit of an idea about this game and any other games that you are working on at the moment.
David, that's it.
Yeah, we can't tell you too much about the game, but we're at the moment we're developing core libraries and technology so that we can do a platform of multiplayer. We're still really into multiplayer games, so we're trying to develop some technology so that we can do multiplayer games.
Okay.
I'm not sure how I can say
Well, will you be looking at, do you think you'll look at revisiting some of the old things you did with the Codemasters, like the sort of, the micro machine style games or the simulators?
Well, Andrew Graham has joined the company, the guy who created Micro Machines.
Right.
And he's working on some prototypes of different types of ideas, but not necessarily the same thing. We want to come up with some new ideas.
Or something that fans of Codemasters games might strike a chord with them.
Yeah.
Okay. How are you going to? Obviously, there's thousands of app producing companies, and I don't know how many apps appear on the iTunes store a day. But how are you going to stand out from the crowd?
There's about 600 apps launched every day. But I think this part of the industry hasn't really changed. It's still about people want to play games because they want to have fun. So it's just about doing the best game. If you can do the best game in a category, then you have to really be the best in class. So if you do a tennis game, it has to be the best tennis game, or if you do a Formula 1 game, it has to be the best Formula 1 game. So we're trying to do really highly playable games, and the marketing is going to be very integrated with the development so that they become viral and spread using social networks and that kind of stuff.
I'm going to bring, unfortunately for you, Bruce, I'm going to bring your picture back with the quote on this time. This is from a magazine after the collapse of Imagine, and you said this: the economics of game software is like high stakes gambling. What are Kwalee going to do to make sure your gamble pays off?
I think the first thing is we've got quite a lot of experience amongst us, people like Andrew Graham, and there's other people that we're looking to employ at the moment who are also immensely experienced. That helps if you've got the experience. David's going to produce very, very high quality games, which is going to help a lot. My job is to get them noticed, which we'll see. And yes, as Dave says, there's over 600 new apps every day. On the App Store alone, there's around 700,000 apps now. It's the most fiercely competitive market ever. And so we're putting a lot of thought into how we go about it.
How much do you think your past experience will help in this market? Obviously, it's a new market to both of you, but you years of experience between you.
Yeah, but partly you really do have to forget about consoles, because with a boxed console product sold at retail, it's just a retail product. Whereas with an app, it's a service, which is a completely different thing. So, for instance, reviews don't matter on apps, but they matter like crazy on box games. With box games, you do virtually all your marketing spend before launch. With apps, you do very little marketing spend before launch. If you take a successful app, you look at Angry Birds, if you look at what it was like a year ago and look at what it's like now, it's a completely different game. Because it is a service that you're providing people, you can keep changing that service. And so, well, the whole thing is just fascinating.
We look forward to seeing what you come up with. This will mean nothing to you guys, but something to these guys, which is a picture of a table tennis table from their office. You guys like to advocate, well, I think it's to get competitiveness perhaps and have fun in the office. You play a lot of table tennis, I believe.
Yeah, we just do it to take a break.
Yeah, and you're from what I've read, one of the top players in table tennis on there. Well, we can't bring a table tennis table in here, but what we have got is a Pong system. We're going to go electronic with table tennis, and we want you two guys to have a game of Pong against each other to show your gaming prowess, and also, you know, to be, because table tennis is a bit old hat really. I think we should use some more modern technology to try and play this game. And we'll grab the. You'll need to.
If somebody wants to run a book, then he's going to look at how quickly he'll be.
I haven't played Pong for 20 years.
Excuses. Is anyone taking bets?
I don't know exactly what score it goes, but I think it might be 21. That's like real table tennis, I think. So if you want to just get comfortable with what we're going to do is press reset to start the game, and you can have a little rally just to practice.
Bruce doesn't really play tennis.
I know.
Tough.
Yeah, well, everyone's got to give it a go. Yeah, right, so what I'm going to do is just reset that. Is that one? Right, okay. So get yourself used to the controls, and then we'll reset and let you start again. Well, the paddles have been lubed up, so they all... Are you comfortable trying to restart, or are you ready to go? Okay. I don't know how long this is going to take.
See, I told you it'd be good.
You're with him. Are you yellow?
So who's who?
I'm green.
I didn't find that out until after about 4 points.
It's thrilling stuff. Oh, there we go. That's how you go. You're getting off the end. They're actually quite evenly matched.
You should play real table.
I'm not sure yours is you're actually moving. Is yours yellow? I think you might. There you are.
Green one's really quick. You used to want to have
That's what I'm thinking. Maybe I would just stop moving the pad. Yeah. Go again. Right, okay. That must have been a one player move. Sorry about that. Right, you ready?
Oh,
Go
dear.
again now. Okay,
Well.
tell me that. We'll try again. Sorry about that. That's what happens when you don't test. test the technology in advance. That's looking better now. Where's the ball? Oh, you've got the... You have to press a button to see it. Ah, right, okay, yeah, you press the button. Yeah. Right, okay. It's really slow. Here all day. It's about 15 or something like that. It's supposed to encourage a competitive nature and love for gaming as well.
It is like a big exclusive.
Now you can do Pong on the iDevice where each of you uses an iPad to evaluate that. Nice, nice.
Anyone and you spend a lot of time playing that.
To make it more challenging, you should have asked them questions while they were playing.
Yeah, I should have done that. Yeah, I still can. If anyone's got any questions they want to ask, by the way, go ahead. It'll be here a while.
Who's the best at Pong?
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, seriously, if you've got any questions, because that is the final part of the presentation, so if you've got any questions, you may as well.
I do have one question. It's very current, but I'd like to know what both what you think of the crowdsourcing done by Double Fine for its yet to be made point-and-click adventure game, and whether that is a viable source of funding.
A lot of guys in our offices spent 30 quid on that.
Yeah, 30 quid. So it's,
I gave them a tenner.
there you go.
Is everyone familiar about what he's talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Psychonauts too.
Yeah.
No, no.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion now, to be honest. So, while that ill-advised idea was panning out, I've put the Kwalee QR code up on the screen and the website address. If you want to find out more about what they're doing, then I'd say scan your mobile phone over it and capture it, except you won't get a bloody signal in this place, so I'm not sure how much use that'll be, but the code's there and the web address. If anyone has got any questions for Bruce and David, then please stick your hands up and we'll ask. Obviously this chap's already asked the question, so do you want to ask it again?
Yeah, it's just Double Fine developers, they went out to Kickstarter, which is the US thing, and said, give us some money, $400,000 over 30 days, and we'll make a point-and-click adventure like we used to do back in the day. This is all from Lucasfilm, or LucasArts it was. They made, I think they made 2 million now, something like that, and they've still got 20 odd days left.
2 million. Not
Yeah.
Purse has given $13 million.
No, that's not the Psychonauts 2. No, it's a separate game. So I wanted to know what your opinions on that. Is it a viable method of funding for other developers, not just for Double Fine?
It's only something that we've kind of learnt about recently, but it's obviously very exciting. It's not something that we've been involved in at all. But it's, I don't know, it's slightly confusing because, like Steve Jobs at Apple used to say, people didn't really know what products they wanted until you made them. So he didn't really believe in like market research, and he just used to make products that people really, he thought, like before people used an iPad, they didn't really know they needed it until they figured out how amazing it was. And this is kind of the opposite end of the scale. This is like consumers actually saying what they want. But I think it's obviously working in that situation. I don't know if I can't imagine it will take over with all products, because usually doing things by committee or with lots of people voting on things, it's not usually a great way to make creative things. But I suppose it's a good way of raising funds.
It might be unique to Double Fine because of their heritage.
Yeah, I think it might be for people like John Hare, like people who've got a reputation for, and who want to bring back old games. So if they've got a really good reputation, but they can't find publishers to risk doing the development funding, it definitely sounds good. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think it's
Any more questions?
Yeah, I have a question. There's a huge trend with payments inside games for tokens, coins, all sorts of things. And basically, a lot of the games that come out on the iPhone right now have a system where you really can't complete the game unless you actually purchase some sort of upgrades for real money. Do you think that's slightly immoral thing to do, or is sort of absolutely okay and you would use that yourself in your games?
Well, the ones that seem to work the best are like Temple Run and Jetpack Joyride, where you don't really need to do it. Like you can buy, like with Temple Run, you can buy things that give you a bit of an advantage. But you can also just play the game, and if you collect enough stars or whatever it is, that you can play it anyway. So that seems like the best model, where if you want to spend some money to save a bit of time, you can, but it doesn't stop you prevent you from actually completing.
The main purchase in game is speeding up. That's what Zynga is. Their business model is just built on speeding up.
Yeah, and copying games.
Yeah, Craig, what was your question?
Yeah, do you see a brighter future for the games now you've got back into it, now you've got a lot more creative control? I know you're talking about, developing for iOS and developing for mobile devices and things. I mean, like, you got out of Codemasters and you got out of, well, you both got out of the industry several times, and now you've got back into it because you're saying it's more like the bedroom development it used to be. Do you think you've got a newfound kind of passion for it now? The big wigs are out of it, now money's been taken out of the equation, and now you've got a lot more creative control over what you actually put out.
I haven't been more excited than in the last few months when I've got back into the industry and like really enjoying going to work every day and looking forward to we've only got like a small team, but they're all very talented, creative people, and we're just trying to make great games, and that's what we like doing, and that's what gives us enjoyment. So we're going to try our hardest. We can't guarantee, but that's what we're going to try and do.
We have Creative Wednesdays now. Everybody's allowed to do what they want on Wednesdays. And so everybody just comes in, and they're all keen gamers, they're all very talented, and they come up with some amazing ideas now. And they just do anything they want.
I suppose you've learned from like the Imagine days that there is an element of truth in that. You've got to allow creative people to be creative, but you've still got to rein them in, obviously, if you want to get things done.
It's getting the balance.
Yeah, I suppose it is. And I suppose you've got the experience now to kind of manage that. Do you think the people you've got working with you now know all this, know that you won't tolerate the crap, won't tolerate dotting round and 2 hour lunches and stuff like that?
Well, one of the advantages of working at Kwalee is there's a very, very, very generous profit incentive.
Yeah.
You could easily double your salary on a profit scheme, but to get a profit scheme you have to make profits.
Yeah.
So I think that focuses people's attention.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Well, with that one, are you planning on developing brand loyalty, or are you straight into
I can ask that question as well.
Sorry,
I don't know, me and Bruce have a difference of opinion on Android. Bruce is really pro Android, and I'm more sceptical because it's such a fragmented marketplace with so many different phones. It's a bit like trying to develop a PC game where you have to make sure it's compatible with loads and loads of different PCs. Android games, people get disappointed with the quality because they buy a game and then the feature doesn't work on that particular phone. And also I'm not sure, I like Apple's the way that you go through the one shop because it's very easy. If you like something you just click it and then you buy it. Whereas with Android you can go to the marketplace but you can also go to different shops and there's a lot more people just trying to buy download games for free and copying. People don't seem to